What happens when you take one of the most unique, purpose-built, specialized race vehicles on the planet, a dirt super late model, designed specifically for dirt oval track racing, and put it on pavement? On today's video, we are going to find out.
I'm having a little too much fun with AI voiceovers.
So this past weekend, we took our dirt superlight model to a pavement race put on by the Southern All-Star Series at Anderson Speedway in South Carolina. In this video, we're going to talk about some interesting things that happened at the physical racetrack, along with some interesting things we learned from a technical standpoint because we were running data acquisition in practice, and we were able to make some interesting observations comparing what happened on the pavement track versus what happened on a dirt track. As you can imagine, the biggest change required to make a dirt car work on pavement is the tires. Dirt tires are way too soft and they're grooved, which would have no utility on pavement. The series elected to go with a NASCAR Touring modified style tire that ended up holding up way better than I thought it would. And conveniently for us, they mounted up perfectly on the rims that we already use. Additionally, we had to tone down some of the crazy suspension that dirt cars run in order to make the car more drivable on pavement. Much to my surprise though, the cars were actually pretty good right out of the gate and didn't require much changing from their traditional dirt setups. Lap time wise, we were actually lapping a full second faster than the ASPHALT late models that usually run there. Yeah, suck it pavement guys. We all knew that us dirt trackers were better at making fast cars anyways. Well, it probably helps that we weigh 500 pounds less, have 300 more horsepower, wider tires, more downforce, and yeah, it's not really an apples to apples comparison. Having driven some pavement late models earlier in my career, I was kind of surprised to realize that the dirt cars on pavement actually drove more like pavement cars than dirt cars. As you can see in this in-car video, we're actually driving the cars pretty straight, we're having to turn the wheel to the left, and we're actually having to use the brakes to slow the car down rather than as a handbrake to pitch the car in the corner. But anyways, after the initial start, we all pretty much got in line and rode around, knowing that it was going to be extremely difficult to pull off a green flag pass. And while I had a great time being exposed to a whole new set of problems to try to solve, and it was a nice change of scenery, this race was never going to be very racy. And what I mean by that is passing would be extremely difficult because of a few inherent issues with putting dirt late models on pavement. The first issue is more an issue with pavement racing in general, and that's that there's only one fastest line, and usually that one fast line is considerably faster than the other lines. So to be able to pass, you need to be way faster to be able to pull into a slower line and still establish position on the car ahead of you. And to further compound this issue, dirt late models are literally the widest race vehicles on the planet. And so to make a pass, you have to pull even further out of the fastest line, and at some point you're just going to run out of room. One of the best ways to pass the car in front of you on pavement is to simply knock them out of the way. This method works pretty good and adds for a lot of excitement. However, dirt late models don't have front bumpers designed to move people out of the way. This is because our preferred method of destruction is knocking them out of the way with the right side, because both cars are usually sideways on corner entry, so the front and rear bumper rarely line up. And this leads to the second issue with running dirt late models on asphalt, and that is the fact that we didn't run any mirrors or radios. I may get some flack for this, but there's a good reason why pavement cars run mirrors and radios. On dirt, because the cars have a much greater yaw angle, this is an acceptable way to go around a corner. Both of these cars can make it around without touching, even though the rear car has passed the rear bumper plane of the front car. This doesn't fly on pavement. If the front car commits to the bottom with the rear car even a little bit past the rear bumper plane of the front car, calamity ensues.
Still down there. Still down there.
Mirrors and radios not only help you from needlessly crashing on corner entry, but it also makes it easier to pass, because all you have to do to establish position is cross the rear bumper plane of the car ahead of you, and you should get some room. Without these, the only way you could tell someone was on your inside was if they were so far up alongside you that you could see them out of the corner of your eye, which inherently makes it even more difficult to pass than it already is. But anyways, I think the weekend was a big success on multiple fronts. The guys at the Southern All-Star Series and at Anderson Motor Speedway took a big bet, and I think it paid off. And we finished third, which was pretty good. Now, during Thursday night practice, we had our data acquisition system installed. I was pretty interested to see if there were any huge differences that jumped out at me when comparing data from a dirt track and a pavement track. Something I noticed before even plugging my laptop in was that the natural frequency of these tires was much higher than the dirt tires that we usually run. Have you ever noticed how dirt late models make a wah kind of sound when they're coming off the corner? That sound is the tire resonating, and the frequency in which it resonates at is about 2 to 3 hertz, which means 2 to 3 complete cycles per second. This frequency is so pervasive that it shows up on almost everything that we measure with a data acquisition system. It shows up in engine RPM, it shows up in all of the shock positions, it shows up in lateral and longitudinal acceleration, etc. But these pavement tires actually resonated almost twice as fast as the dirt tires do, which you can hear pretty clearly in this video. Comparing data from Ultimate Motorsports Park, which is of similar size and shape as Anderson Speedway, there were a few interesting things that jumped out. To get things out of the realm of squiggly lines on a computer screen, I made this summary sheet to go over some of the interesting findings. For starters, I found it pretty interesting that even though these tracks were really close in overall length, that you still carried a little bit more speed on the dirt track than the pavement track. Now there's a few variables not being controlled here, for example, banking, but one would still intuit that you would carry a lot more speed on a pavement track than a dirt track. When looking at the wheel spin percentages, I wasn't surprised to find that we were spinning the tires faster on dirt than on pavement, but I was surprised that we were still spinning the tires almost 30% faster than the ground speed, even on pavement. According to what I've read, the optimal slip ratio for a tire on pavement is somewhere in between 8 and 12%, and the fact that we were spinning the wheels almost 30% faster means we were probably leaving something on the table. This was probably caused partly because my car was a little bit oversteery to begin with, and also because I didn't start playing with my throttle control device until after I took the data acquisition system off. Moving along to longitudinal acceleration, I was very surprised to find that on these two tracks, we pulled the same exact peak forward and backward amount of G-forces. If you asked me beforehand, I would have guessed that we would have been able to pull way more acceleration in both directions on pavement. And obviously, the average longitudinal acceleration is going to be 0, because as long as you're going about the same speed at the start-finish line when you begin the lap and when you end the lap, the average of the accelerations is going to 0 out. Looking at lateral acceleration, Somewhat surprisingly, we were also able to pull more lateral acceleration on dirt than on asphalt. Now, one might say that because we're looking at peak acceleration, that because dirt tracks are generally rougher, that going over holes is going to spike the accelerometers and give unrepresentative data. But having looked at enough of this stuff, it's pretty common to see sustained lateral acceleration in the high 2s and even into the 3Gs laterally. Which is just crazy considering the baddest of the bad street cars can barely pull over 1G on a skid pad, and a Boeing commercial airliner's wings fall off at about 2.5 Gs. Now the last thing we'll touch on before wrapping this video up is peak yaw rate. Yaw is the rotation of the vehicle around a vertical axis when looking at it from top view, usually measured in degrees. Yaw rate is the acceleration in which that car rotates, usually measured in degrees per second. So if a car rotated 45 degrees over the span of 1 second, its yaw rate would be 45 degrees per second. Other than the measurement of number of tires grooved per race event, yaw rate was probably the biggest measurable difference between running on dirt and asphalt, which can be explained by dirt cars doing some variant of this on corner entry. Well, I think we'll end this video right here. We learned some other really cool stuff on the suspension side, but unfortunately, that's classified. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.